Universal Pictures and AMC Theaters decided to stop fighting about the distribution of new movies to movie theaters and then how soon you can get it on premium video on demand. This is a big deal because it shows that direct to consumer, from the manufacturer, from the creator to the consumer, just keeps growing, and it's slowly, like the internet, just taking over everything as technology improves and as consumers get used to buying directly from entertainment sources. Really, really interesting article in Deadline. I'm going to go into the history, though, of the dispute that they had, the Trolls World Tour war with AMC Theaters, and how that is now starting to get resolved, and movie theaters are kind of accepting what's going on. And we will get into all these articles and all these stories. First, if you want to support my work, collegeofthedead.com. College of the Dead Graduation Day is a 48-page full-color zombie apocalypse series. It's already shipping. It's a fantastic-looking book and a great story. Check it on out. And also at epicmermaids.com, you can sign up for The Mermaids, my new full-color ongoing series. It's an epic mermaid fantasy. It's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. Full color, great story. You're definitely going to love it. So what happened was this. So Universal and AMC are just now agreeing to kind of a new deal for how Universal will agree to give exclusivity to movie theaters when they first put out their new movies, and then will offer to video on demand platforms the same movies. They were saying that they were going to do the same day and date, and this got into a big fight with AMC. Just so you know who AMC is the world's largest the world's largest movie theater chain, and it's owned by a Chinese company. But they have a lot of influence in movie distribution, and they were not happy about this deal. Universal's actually owned by Comcast, a big movie company, and the Trolls movie sequel called Trolls World Tour came out and did huge business. Now, when this came out, this Trolls sequel, one of the reasons why it did so much business is because movies were not really being distributed. A lot of places were shut down because of the health event. And it was pretty, it really is interesting and exciting. They did like $95 million in rental fees. And they have been offering a $19.99 rental price for 48 hours worth of being able to watch Trolls 2. Now, with the video on demand, the studio gets about 80% of the revenue. So if they do $95 million in rental fees like they did, and that was accomplished in the first 19 days only, so they've since gotten more money from it, and they get 80% of that, that's like $77 million before promotion for the movie. But that's a lot of money. It's excellent, and the studio, Universal, was very happy for that sequel. To get a perspective on it, when movies are released through movie theaters, usually it's a 50-50 or a 65-40 split, or 60-40, 65-35 split in the early weeks when a movie's released. So they were really happy at the studio, and they were a little bit too happy. And they went kind of like a little bit nuts. And they made this announcement that from now on, Universal was going to do PVOD, the Premium Video on Demand. Premium Video on Demand is basically when you're offering a movie that's during its theatrical run also available rent on demand. And usually it's 48 hours for $19.99. So what wound up happening was the head of AMC Theaters said, hey, you know, you can do that if you want to do that, but I'll tell you what, we are not going to distribute any future Universal Studios titles at AMC. So this was in an AMC report, and there was this whole big article about their battle. So buried in AMC's, and this is coming from Deadline, great movie industry publication, definitely worth checking out. Okay, so on one of their first quarter financial filings, they said, while we are in active dialogue with Universal, no movies made by Universal Studios are currently on our docket. that means they've agreed to show no new Universal Studios movies, none, literally none, because of the dispute over Trolls 2 being released to PVOD without being released to theaters. The note comes a little bit more than after a month, after AMC CEO and President Adam Aron alerted the studio in a public note to Universal Studios Chairman Donna Langley that the circuit is barring all the studio's future titles. So it's one thing to experiment with the PVOD stuff, the direct-to-consumer, and generate some money, and do that with one title, and that's terrific. But it's another thing to say, all right, well, now we're going to change all of the movies that we're putting out to PVOD, and now we can't show them in AMC theaters anymore. That's a big problem. It's a big problem for Universal, and more of a problem for Universal even than AMC. So they've been kind of going back and forth and trying to figure out how they could make a deal. Aron's embargo came in the immediate wake of NBC Universal's CEO Jeff Shell's victory lap. Basically, he was bragging how he did a $100 million grossing PVOD release of Trolls World Tour. And I'm laughing because, when you throw it in people's face like that, they get angry. So they announced in the Wall Street Journal, after bragging about the $100 million grossing PVOD release, that they would release movies on both formats, indicating a day-and-date theatrical VOD shift once theaters reopen. So basically saying because we had this big success for ourselves while theaters were being pounded and all forced to shut down, we're going to now, instead of waiting 30 days or any amount of time, Universal's announcing, we're just going to release movies the same day to be watched through PVOD as in theaters. That is not something that the theaters were happy about. So Universal basically said, hey, you know what? In that case, we are not going to schedule any more Universal releases for any of our theaters. So that was the dispute, all because this cute little troll guy with the cool hair made so much money for them. But who knows? Is that a one-off thing? And the other thing is, this is an interesting article because they talk about, what the future is of this kind of PVOD stuff. Because, yes, when you see a PVOD movie, okay, so this is great. This covers it. So while the numbers look huge on Trolls World Tour, a number of factors need to be kept in mind. Because there's multiple markets and there are multiple people in different situations that will see a movie, say, more than once. How much will they pay each time that they see it? Are they willing to... It breaks it down really well here. What's the ceiling in regards to the ultimate revenue on Trolls World Tour? Will anyone want to buy the movie to own now that they've shelled out $19.99 to see it for a 48-hour window? And that's a good question, because a lot of people, if they see the movie in a theater and decide they like it, they're comfortable with the idea of going and then saying, okay, well, I'll keep it at home. I'll get I'll buy a copy and I'll save it. But do they feel the same way if they rented a copy to see at home for $19.99 for a 48-hour period? Will they then say, okay, well, I want to spend another $20 to buy it when it's available for sale? Would they rent it again in a cheaper window? So would they want to spend more money to see it again on a rental basis for less money when the movie is outside of its initial release period? How will the film's subsequent windows be impacted? So subsequent windows being like other paid TV or subscription services like Netflix type platforms. It's quite conceivable that Universal will make enough to cover the picture's $95 million budget and some portion of its marketing spend, but potentially lose some cash. So the idea being, like, every time, the reason you have distribution windows is so that when you release entertainment, movies, TV, and we do it with comics too sometimes, you can get the most potential revenue out of releasing them through multiple channels. So there's always conversations about, should it be same day and date if you're releasing print as well as digital, let's say, for comic books. So that's why some of these considerations come up. But the people that make their money in a dedicated distribution channel like AMC Theaters are really concerned about, like, well, even if it works out well for the studio, how's it going to work out ultimately for the theater? So this is an article in Deadline that talks about the resolution of the dispute. So here you go. After AMC CEO Adam Aron publicly threatened that he would never play Universal movies as long as the studio had a plan for simultaneous theatrical PVOD releases like Trolls World Tour, the world's #1 exhibitor and the Hollywood studio have broken bread with the following multi-year agreement. So they've made a multi-year agreement. So Universal and its division Focus Features releases will play at AMC Theaters for a 17-day exclusive theatrical window. That doesn't mean that they won't also play at other theaters. It means, as far as AMC Theaters go, they will give them a 17-day exclusive. I assume that means for all theaters, right? Because there are other theater chains. After that time, Universal has the option to make such titles available on PVOD platforms, including AMC Theaters on Demand. Which I guess I didn't even know they had that platform. Good for them. In the coming weeks, the two companies will begin talks surrounding international distribution agreements in the countries in Europe and the Middle East served by AMC. One of Universal's big picks this year abroad is MGM's Bond movie, No Time to Die, being released in November. So MGM is putting out another Bond movie and this one's No Time to Die. Universal has international distribution for that movie. From what I hear, if a movie is performing like gangbusters at the box office, like a Get Out, Fast and Furious movie, Illumination title, or Jurassic World, Universal won't simply cut and run and put the feature on PVOD. They're apt to live the green of the theatrical run out. So they'll let the theatrical run, generate as much revenue as possible before putting it on PVOD. But rival distributors are already calling the deal seismic. That's why I'm doing this video. It is a big deal. It's what we've been waiting for, says one studio boss who foresees other studios falling in line and hammering out similar terms with AMC and the other big chains, Regal and Cinemark. See, why is it that AMC can say whatever they want to say, like especially when movie theaters are closed right now for the most part? The answer is these movie studios, they're very interested in digital distribution. They make a lot of money with digital distribution, but still their primary bills are being paid and their revenues are being covered through sales in movie theaters. And ultimately it'll shift. But how much of it will shift? It depends on what consumers want to do. So these are not trivial changes. These are huge changes, but this is a big change. It's definitely a big change. But the theaters like AMC still have a lot of leverage to try to control and force decisions on these movie studios. Commenting on the agreement, Adam Aron said, AMC enthusiastically embraces this new industry model, both because we are participating in the entirety of the economics of the new structure and because premium video on demand creates the added potential for increased movie studio profitability, which should in turn lead to the green lighting of more theatrical movies. That means, check this out, AMC is getting a cut of the PVOD revenues. The deal brings to mind AMC and Paramount's deal on 2015 Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse and Blumhouse's Paranormal Activity: The Ghost Dimension. The difference with that deal is that when screens dropped below a certain hundreds level, Paramount could have the next home window kick in, with those theaters, AMC and other indies, sharing in the monies from that stream. So when they started showing less screens for the films, it allowed Blumhouse and Scout's Guide films to be shown on other platforms. Again, it's a little odd to think about how, why is the theater chain distribution having any say or any control over the content being distributed on other platforms? And the answer is it's just the understanding of exclusivity and them dedicating their retail business to showing those movies. So they've got that existing relationship and they're honoring the relationship because the studios feel they need it. The latest deal is strictly between AMC and Universal. Universal's traditional windows for electronic sell-through (EST) and video on demand remains unchanged. The companies reached this agreement based on their shared commitment to a mutually beneficial long-term partnership that is focused on serving consumers worldwide while preserving and enhancing the theatrical experience. Donna Langley, chairman of UFEG. The theatrical experience continues to be the cornerstone of our business. The partnership we forged with AMC is driven by our collective desire to ensure a thriving future for film distribution and its ecosystem and to meet consumer demand with flexibility and optionality. I mean, they all seem very happy with themselves. So, this is an interesting change. They have not released the numbers to understand, like, well, how much money are they actually giving from their PVOD revenues for what amount of time to AMC Theaters for this. But generally, it's viewed as a big success for AMC. Okay, this article is from Hollywood Reporter. How Wall Street views the AMC-Universal theatrical window deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. This could change the economics for the movie studio business and change the economics for theaters. And there's a lot of money involved. Quote, "We worry that the near-term impact on attendance could be more substantial and consumers in the long run will continue to opt to watch more non-blockbuster films in their homes," says one Wall Street expert. Well, of course, you know, if it's a small movie, if it's not like the latest gigantic Marvel movie or whatever, you know, and you're used to watching some of these movies at home, like, all right, you really want to see it, you've seen the marketing for it, so you'll watch the movie at home. Wall Street analysts on Wednesday weighed in on AMC's Theaters' historic agreement with Universal Pictures that will allow the studio's movies to be made available on premium video on demand just 17 days of play after 17 days of play in cinemas, including 3 weekends. So it's got to be 3 weekends. The deal, which initially covers AMC's U.S. locations, shadows a traditional theatrical window of nearly 3 months before studios can make movies available in the home, and they haven't given out the financial details. So what does it mean for the movie going and like? Okay, Nathanson predicted movie attendance would be cannibalized. He said that looking at the top 2019 films in categories shows that roughly 80 to 90% of total box office was generated within the first 4 weeks, with the first 3 weeks accounting for 70 to 80%. Okay, so if the 17-day option becomes standard across all studios, we expect a higher level of movie attendance cannibalization than if the exhibitors could have held the PVOD window at 30 days, Nathanson concluded. So you're really talking about a difference of 13 days, roughly. But maybe not even a full 13 days because you've got 3 weeks out of 4. But still, it's substantial because once the habit is formed to watch videos at home, more and more people are going to watch videos at home and not watch them in theaters. He added, if consumers are trained, there you go, exactly what I'm saying here, are trained to wait only a few weeks to watch the movie at home, especially while increased shutdown threats exist, we worry that the near-term impact on attendance can be more substantial, and consumers in the long run will continue to opt to watch more non-blockbuster films in their homes going forward. Of course, the lower box office attendance will also negatively impact high-margin per cap spending on food and beverages, right? Because people are not going to spend $8 on a soda and $15 on popcorn or whatever if they're eating at home. So for $20, you and your loved one, or you and your whole family, or you and a bunch of strangers can watch a new movie for $20. Like, so that's a heck of a lot less than bringing a whole bunch of kids or a family or, you know, even a couple going out and buying movie tickets and popcorn and whatever and driving out there, and also the threat of whatever's going on with public health at the time. What about the Windows deal's financial impact on studios? There's good news here with this PVOD announcement, as they can open up a shorter consumer window to more efficiently leverage marketing spending, Nathanson argued. However, given only 17 days of theatrical release, we would also expect a larger negative impact on downstream windows like electronic sell-through, VOD rentals, and pay-one per title payments. But he concluded, given the higher PVOD revenue take for studios and depending on the PVOD price net-net, we think that the outcomes are positive for major Hollywood studios. And what he's saying is what we were talking about with the respect to the other article, that if you've rented a movie PVOD, premium video on demand, meaning while it's still in theaters, you're generally paying $19.99 with whatever PVOD platform you're getting it from. Are you going to want to, you've rented it now for 48 hours, are you going to want to rent it again when it's less? Would you want to buy it in the future if you've already invested $20 in that movie? But, you know, so the analyst is saying he thinks overall it'll be more revenue for Hollywood studios. You'd think it would have to be, right? Because there are that many more platforms that you can offer the video, the movies for $19.99. There's not an unlimited number of theater seats, but there's, you know, many, many times the number of people that could be PVOD viewers, and 80% of that revenue is going to go to the studio. Although, as we saw, AMC is going to have some sort of a revenue share. So that how much revenue share, who knows? And we'll kind of have to see as the details come out, because they're not really releasing that kind of detail yet of what percentage the movie theater is going to get of the money. Nathanson, in his Wednesday report, also reiterated his previous voiced view that the only long-term winners in film are Netflix, Amazon, and Disney, because they've built scaled global streaming platforms that will benefit from a shortened release cycle of theatrical films that populate their own proprietary SVOD platforms. Subscription video on demand platforms. That's SVOD. He expected the AMC-Universal window deal to pressure those unaligned studios to consolidate to find cost synergies as profitable long-term windows like home entertainment, cable syndication, and pay one are squeezed by SVOD competition. So really, it's amazing. But yeah, Disney made the right move with Disney Plus. And by having exclusive content through that channel, by offering, Mandalorian and the rest of their library, but by just saying, yeah, we're going to try to make this attractive, they've had a huge success. They have like 55 million subscribers for Disney Plus already, and they were not projecting that to be so successful so quickly. It's about double what their projections were. They were definitely helped by the health event and all the shutdowns and stuff like that, but doesn't matter. They've just been really, really helped out a lot. But as those subscriber video on demand platforms get bigger and bigger, Amazon's bigger, Netflix is bigger, Disney is bigger, all the other crazy platforms are bigger. HBO Max just came out with over 4 million subscribers after 1 month. It's going to mean that these other distribution channels that compete with SVOD platforms like cable syndication and pay one are not going to do as well, because all the money is going to get grabbed up by these other platforms. Distribution always matters. Whatever you're producing, whatever your business is, whatever your content is. So you always have to be looking at alternative distribution platforms as much as you can, because getting money from one place, what are you going to do as technology changes? And obviously it keeps changing, or one thing becomes not as viable. So as a creator and publisher, I'm always thinking of that. And I am making some, I'm going to start experimenting with some other distribution methods soon for my content. As far as my comic book content, as far as exhibitors go, the fact that AMC has struck the first deal with Universal puts the rest of the industry at a disadvantage, Nathanson suggested. It is possible Cinemark and Cineworld will try to push for greater economics and or a longer period of theatrical exclusivity. However, now that Universal, and maybe other studios shortly, probably by next week, have this deal in place as an initial template, it may be challenging to find any other outcomes to meaningfully improve terms. Now that Universal made this deal, everyone else is going to have to make this deal. Unless Disney makes sort of a different deal, because Disney gets away with murder because there's such a huge percentage of box office with all the brands that they own. Like an absurd, huge percentage of box office. Disney's film business is very interesting. That's a whole other video. On the positive side, exhibitors would benefit if the PVOD window helps de-risk future movie investments and leads to more greenlighting of movies, especially independent and mid-tier films, he wrote. This announcement optimistically could also help some studios stick to some of their 2020 release dates that were at risk of shifting into 2021 because of the health event, which would allow for much-needed content to fill the screens in the fourth quarter. That is a fantasy. That's just not going to happen. He means well, but everything is getting delayed, and we've seen all the articles on that. The analyst also highlighted that maybe the biggest positive for theater owners could be using this new 17-day window to reach a similar agreement with Netflix and other SVOD services that are ramping up production for their own original movies. That's a good point. Netflix is releasing more and more original movies. Maybe they'd be willing to allow theater distribution for a 17-day exclusive and then put the movie on Netflix. That said, that doesn't seem to be Netflix's business model, so probably not, but maybe a couple of the other SVOD services that need to watch their profit and loss a little more carefully than Netflix has, because Netflix is really just judged on subscriber growth. People don't seem to care as much about it being profitable. Same with Amazon, kind of like it's profitable for other reasons. They can afford to lose money. But other SVOD services might see the benefit in allowing movie theaters to run their movies for a similar 17-day window. Distribution, this is why if you make great content and you're creative about your distribution as well, and like who you make business arrangements with, you can do really, really well. And different people are in different situations with the production of their content and the distribution of it. Nathanson also expects fallout on the number of movie screens in the U.S. We would expect to see the number of screens in the U.S. start to shrink as owners refocus on protecting their most profitable multiplex locations, which will hurt the overall distribution industry because it means less screens. Less screens means less revenue to for movies. That's the bottom line. He wrote, this would be especially true if the smaller independent exhibitors are unable to successfully negotiate their own revenue splits of PVOD windows. Yeah, because there are smaller chains. Not everybody is AMC. So, smaller chains may not get any revenue splits from the PVOD. So if they're not going to share in any of the video on demand revenue, like the studio is willing to share with AMC, Universal's giving to AMC, then they're just not going to get any of the money. So they're going to be missing a bunch of revenue their competitors are going to actually get. Sometimes it helps to be a gigantic company. Credit Suisse exhibition analyst Megan Durkin in a report argued that in the AMC-Universal deal, there's only clear winner is consumers. Well, yes, that's true. Consumers have more options. But let's see how she said it. I like how I said it. She explained, we expected a 30-day window. We were surprised to see AMC to agree to only 17 days, which increases the risk many consumers will wait a few weekends to see films in home rather than going to theater. Now, maybe she wasn't paying attention, but I know you guys are paying attention when they said 3 weekends. So how many weekends does she think are between 3 and 4? It's actually 1 weekend. So she might be missing that. But let's see what else she says. Key will be whether the revised theatrical splits and PVOD revenue sharing will cover any lost box office from the shortened window, how many films the studios will elect to sell into PVOD, whether the studios and theater companies embrace this new AMC Universal PVOD model. Certainly, Universal needs broad theater company acceptance of this model to be able to release films into PVOD. And if PVOD flexibility causes studios to release more films into theaters in the future due to leveraging their marketing spend better and capturing enhanced economics with $20 per home pay-per-view rentals versus the typical $5 per home after 74 days. So typically it's $5 per home for 74 days for video on demand rentals. Added Durkin, if this arrangement was structured in a way that results in higher studio profitability or less studio risk, we could see more theatrical releases and a more diverse, we all love diversity, slate of films, which could prove a positive for theaters over time. Her overall conclusion, given the environment created by the health event in which theaters in the U.S. still remain closed, and with film releases being constantly pushed back, investors are likely to view this deal as increasing uncertainty for the theatrical distribution model until financial benefits can be proven out and the impact on consumer behaviors and studio output are better understood. Well, that's a pretty fair way to say it. This is damn good analysis. B. Riley FBR analyst Eric Wold had more of a wait-and-see take on the AMC-Universal deal, despite some initial concern among investors. In our opinion, it's too early to draw a line in the sand on this agreement and come to the conclusion that it's a positive for Universal and a negative for AMC or any other exhibitors, he wrote. It's definitely a positive for Universal. Because, look, once they're in the game of shortening the window, they're splitting some revenue, but they're only splitting revenue for now, and it's for a limited duration. I think they said 5 years or something like that. Also, that deal is subject to change depending on the acceptance of other major studio players like Disney. When Disney comes in and says, yeah, well, we'll only do half that revenue split in terms of the revenue split, instead of maybe like, who knows what they're splitting, whatever, X, and Disney's like, no, we only want to give you half of X, then everyone will follow the Disney model. And then after a few years, they'll go to day and date, which will threaten the theaters even more. So the theaters really don't have leverage. Why? Because while they have distribution, it's not exclusive distribution. It's very important distribution, but it's the content creators. Content is king. It kind of always goes back to that. Nevertheless, we are remaining on the sidelines with a neutral rating for pure play exhibitors like AMC and Cinemark Holdings until there's an increased visibility into the industry restart. And response from moviegoers. He said that on the surface, the deal seemingly represents a reduction in the overall theatrical window from nearly 3 months to 3 weeks. But, he said, this would be too naive of an interpretation of the agreement, he explained. While this agreement gives Universal the option to make any film available to PVOD after 17 days, we do not believe every film would move to PVOD after 17 days. In our opinion, this agreement provides for an out for Universal as well as AMC to move underperforming titles out of the theater into the PVOD window, where they may not only perform at a higher level, but can also benefit from the marketing spend promoting the theatrical window. Now, this is pretty clever. This is a good observation, And what he's saying here is the mutual advantage is this, is let's say a movie comes out and it doesn't do all that well. Well, this is an opportunity for Universal to say to the movie theater, okay, look, we'll pull the movie from theatrical release quickly and we'll stick it in just PVOD. So we've done all of this marketing and we'll get video on demand sales and we'll share some of that revenue with you because you helped us promote and roll out the movie. And so if for a movie that's not doing well in the theaters and the theater isn't making money there because they need to get revenue for those seats, the theater can share in some of the revenue from PVOD without even allocating any seats to it. That opens up another screen, and then a new movie can be shown there, either a new Universal movie or another movie studios movie. So it does give some flexibility. It shares the benefit of the technology with the studio and the theater chain. Pretty clever. I hadn't thought of that. He added, we find it hard to believe that Universal will move a film out of the theater or provide a less expensive home option to consumers if the film is performing well in theaters and still generating attractive box office revenues. And as for AMC, we believe this not only provides an opportunity to move underperforming films out of the theater, where they're taking up valuable screen real estate, as we were just saying, but creates a new way for the exhibitor to share in the economics of the film as it moves to the next distribution window. So it's sort of a joint venture in a way, but they're not formalizing it as a joint venture. They're just kind of like trying to work in good faith together. I mean, we'll see what happens. Interestingly, it used to be that there was movie studios that would own their own theaters. Viacom owned a lot of their own theaters, but to my understanding, not anymore. So there's not like a Disney of movie theaters that owns like every distribution channel. There's no vertical integration that way, meaning, distribution as part of the business, like the movie theaters being owned by the movie studio. So they have to figure out how they want to collaborate and leverage their strengths. Wold expects more deals in that vein. We would not be surprised to see other option agreements entered into between the remainder of the major studios and the leading exhibition chains, especially as the other exhibitors may be unwilling to keep a film on their screens anyway once it becomes available through PVOD, and they would likely prefer to share in the PVOD economics as well. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Very interesting. A lot of ways of doing business models. A lot of ways of doing business. Doesn't apply to everybody, but interesting to think about. Meanwhile, MKM Partners analyst Eric Handler mentioned the windowing news in a Wednesday report about giant screen company IMAX, arguing that AMC's PVOD deal with Universal should not have a material impact on IMAX. It has nothing to do with IMAX. They have giant screens. That's it. That's IMAX. The analyst said the news caught many people by surprise, adding, while this event is being perceived, rightly or wrongly, as an incremental negative for the industry, we believe IMAX is well insulated from any implications from any PVOD developments. Yes, they are, because their whole thing is we have giant movies. Like, you can't replace going to an IMAX movie at home unless you've got a whatever it is, 100-foot, 300-foot movie screen at home. Most people don't have that. Where would you put it? Of note, Universal cannot announce a film will launch on PVOD platforms until the second weekend of its theatrical release. So it'll be promoted, and it is interesting, as its theatrical release, and then after the second weekend, it doesn't have to be 2 weeks, it's got to pass 2 weekends from its theatrical release before they can announce, or will announce, that it's a PVOD platform. As nearly all of the films shown on the IMAX screens run for just 1 or 2 weeks, the company should not face any overlap with the PVOD window. And Handler said, in addition, as many IMAX customers pay to see a particular film specifically because of the platform's premium large format experience, we believe the marginal utility is far greater for the company than what an in-home viewing opportunity can deliver, as I just said. This is interesting. It's interesting. It has applications on all content creation and distribution. I really like articles that get into the details of distributing content, and especially and how it affects direct to consumer, and also customer behavior when they have different options with their content. If you would like to support my work, go to collegeofthedead.com. Get a copy of College of the Dead Graduation Day, where college costs you an arm and a leg. 48 pages, full color. It is a very cool ongoing zombie apocalypse series. We're working on book 3 right now, Spring Break. We actually just got a new artist on it. He is fantastic. I'm waiting to see his first layouts. The script is completely done, and we will offer that for sale as soon as the book is complete. I like to finish my books before we offer them. The Mermaids is actually complete. You can sign up to find out when it's going to launch. It will be soon. And I'd love to see you be on our email list so you can be told when it's launching. The Mermaids comic book is an epic mermaid fantasy. It's Game of Thrones with mermaids. That's how you can think of it. It's very cool, very well written. And you can get on the email list, of course, for free at epicmermaids.com. I'll have a link in the description. I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I hope you know I'll miss you.